Hello everyone and welcome to my little corner of the internet. My name's Michael and I'm bitten by a radioactive book. January has flown by and it was a fantastic reading month, and you will see that in my wrap-up. But now February is almost upon us, so let's talk about my February TBR. And it has some kind of a motto. It's like February with friends, because I'm going to read so many books as buddy reads. I think all of them, and it's about, I don't know, 11? Yeah. So let's get started. First off, we have The War by B. Tearling. I'm going to read this with Caroline. She's a Brazilian book blogger and very active in the SFF community on Twitter. Um, I don't know much about it. I saw a review by Thomas from SFF 180. He kind of said it was a bit like Malazan, so of course that got my interest in terms of like the complexity and the world building. It is supposed to be a very bizarre book, multi-POV. There are cyclopses that are held in captivity in a cellar and learn their sexual experience. There is a hunter going, I think, for an arrow or something into, I think, the war, and the war is some kind of forest. It has a bit of an African feel as well, so yeah, it seems to be very, very unique, is the word I'm looking for, and I, yeah, really like to see what this is all about. Next up we have Under Heaven by Gay Gavel K. This is one of his stand-alone-ish books. Now there are other books in the world, but when it first came out it was a standalone with a specific Asian kind of feel. I want to read way more Guy Gavin Kay. I've only read Tigana by him, and I think he's one of the best prose writers in fantasy at the moment, and so I want to get 2 more books by him. I'm going to read this with Catherine Barker. Some of you might remember her. She had a booktube channel, but last year she kind of dropped out of this, but maybe she's coming back. She's a Serbian booktuber, and she's an author, and she has published the first book of her fantasy series in Serbia, so she had lots of things to do, but maybe we can convince her to come back to booktube, and I'm really looking forward to read this with her. Next up we have The Shadow of the Torturer, which is the first installment in Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun series. I know almost nothing about it, so I can't even speculate. I know that it is supposed to be a bit grim, and there is like lots of different opinions about the writing, because the writing in itself is very unique and complex, and I tend to like that kind of writing. I heard very positive things about it by Kevin, who is someone I know from Goodreads and who knows a lot about old school fantasy. I also saw recently very positive reviews by Wings from the channel Wings and Ink. And I'm going to try this book with Paul from A Common Touch of Fantasy and Mo from Mo's Reads. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to it. Then I'm really looking forward to finish up a series I'm reading in the last couple of months. It's David Hare's Moontides Quartet. I'm going to read the 4th and final installment, Ascendance Right. I'm going to read this with Caitlin from Kitty G. Same as with the last 2 books, we really enjoyed this series. I think I have talked a lot about the series, so you will probably know what it is about, and as it's the final volume I won't go into any more detail. Next up we have The Tower Lord by Anthony Ryan, the 2nd installment in his Raven Shadows series. I heard very mixed things about it, because the first book very much focused on one character called Valen Alsorna and told his story, and now in the 2nd book Anthony Ryan adds like 3 more points of view. And I personally like multiple POV books, so I still have like high hopes for this one. This is something I'm going to be reading in my German Goodreads group with a bunch of people there, so I'm really looking forward to this one and yeah, see what Anthony Ryan does with the series. Next up we have God's War by Cameron Hurley. This is the first installment in her finished Beldame Apocrypha series. It's about Nyx, and Nyx is, I think, a mercenary, and she is on a world that is wrapped in war. I don't know much about the book. I just wanted to read like the finished series by Cameron Hurley because I really enjoyed her book The Mirror Empire like 2 years ago. I've read it, or 1.5 years ago. And yeah, so I wanted to see what her older series was about. I think it is more about a science fantasy kind of thing, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to read this with Helena. Helena is a Belgian book blogger, and she's a frequent commenter on my videos, and yeah, so I'm really looking forward to read a book with her. The next book is technically a reread for me. It's City of Golden Shadows by Ted Williams. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, that is the running gag of your channel, because I think I talked about reading it in October and then again in November, and I didn't get to it because it was always like the last book out, the one that I didn't manage to fit into the month. And as it is a reread, I always then, yeah, kind of skipped it. But it is a cyberpunk book by Ted Williams. I've never finished the series. I've only read like the first book when it came out in, I don't know, 1996 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But I really want to get to it now, and this time around I made it a buddy read. Yeah, that's clever of me. And I'm going to read this with Paul from Common Touch of Fantasy and with Caitlin from Kitty G. Next up we have The Traitor Baru Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. This is one of last year's most discussed books. A lot of people really liked it. Some people really didn't. So a controversial book, a very unique book as well. With a lot of political intrigue, economics in it, a very unique kind of take on fantasy. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm again going to read this with Helena and with Caitlin from Kitty G, and we're joined by P.T. Hilton and James Chatham. So yeah, that will be a lot of fun to discuss a book of that quality in a large group. And so I'm really looking forward to it. Next up we have a more unusual book for me because it is YA fantasy and I normally tend to skip those. It's The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. I think when Samantha from Novels and Nonsense reviewed it the first time, I was like skeptical if I wanted to pick it up or not because her review was not very like enthusiastic about it, but I wanted to give it a try, and so I bought the audiobook but never listened to it. And now that came up again, that a bunch of people wanted to read it, and I said, okay, let's join in, so if I don't like it, there will be at least people to talk about it, so that is always fun, and I think that is like the biggest buddy read for me of the month, because we are joined by Samantha, who already read the book, and I'm going to read it with Shay from Shay Adventure, Chris Rhodes from The Reading Roads, Giselle Bradley, Sarah from Books and Junk, Sana from Inkbones Books, and Melanie Parker, who is a book blogger as well, and I know her from Goodreads, and she is a very lovely person, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to read with all these great people and discuss The Queen of the Teal. Next up we have The Skull Throne by Peter V. Brett. It's the fourth and penultimate installment in his Demon Cycles series. I've read Desert Spear this month. You will see it in my wrap-up. I enjoy the series. I'm not completely overwhelmed positively by the series so far, but it's very enjoyable. series, so I'm very interested to see how it continues. The last book had like a huge cliffhanger at the end, so I want to see how that is going to be resolved. And as with the last book, I've read this with Elena from Elena Reads Books and James from The Observant Raven, and I will continue with them, to see what this fourth book of the Demon Cycle is all about. And last but not least, we have another reread for me. That is really a back to the roots read for me. It's Dragons of Autumn Twilight, the first installment in Margaret Weis's and Tracy Hickman's Dragonlance Chronicles. This is actually the fantasy book that brought me to fantasy, the first fantasy book I've ever read. I've reread it like 3 or 4 times over the course of the last 20-25 years. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to delve back into the world. I want to read a bit more Dragonlance this year, and yeah, starting it off with the trilogy that started it all felt like appropriate. I'm going to be joined by Christina, who I know from Goodreads, from my Dragons and Jetpacks group, where I'm a co-moderator. And for her it is a reread as well, and she loved the series. We're going to be joined by Shay from Shay Adventure, and probably Morgan from Little Word Weaver, who both haven't read the series, so it's going to be very interesting to read the series with people who already know and love the world, and people who are exposed to the characters and the world. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to get back into it. So, thankfully for me, February has 29 days to get through these 11 books, but it will be a challenge, I kid you not. Apart from those, I also have like the second half of Chasm City by Alistair Reynolds, which I still have to finish, and I'm also reading my workbook, my physical book, which is The Curious Case of the Clockwork Man by Mark Hodder, the second installment in his Burton and Swinburne series. I'm like 60% through with that, so yeah, hopefully I can fit these two into it as well, and it's going to be a crazy and challenging reading month, but I'm really looking forward to it, especially because I'm reading it with so many great and interesting people. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of me, subscribe to my channel. And until next time, I hope you get bitten by a really good book too. Bye.